Welcome to this week's episode of the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My guest this week is James Croker, Commercial Director of Bournemouth Rugby Club. I've known James for a long time now, since he very first walked through my doors and sold me a sponsorship to the rugby club, having not met him and having not been associated with the rugby club before. We got involved with the school side of their programme and their community side, and it paid dividends for us, and it was great to support them. So I know James relatively well, but I don't really know much about his story, his life pre-Bournemouth Rugby. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about something he's really passionate about, which is about creating a sense of community and also the values of rugby. So I know this is going to be a great episode. Strap yourselves in and listen. And if you're really enjoying the podcast, then please remember to help us by subscribing to the Evolve to Succeed podcast on your favourite channel. Enjoy the show. Welcome, James, to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Really excited about a conversation because I think we're going to have quite a wide-ranging conversation. And there's a lot of people in the local business community that know you, but do they know the real James? And perhaps we'll dig into a bit about those early years of you and what made you and your military career. But really what you're here to talk about and what I really wanted to learn from you and for you to share with others is about how do you create community? Because that's something that, is an accolade that I would, pin on you all day long. And I know you're also passionate about talking about the values of rugby and how they can make a difference in everyday life. So I think we've got a lot to cram into this episode. So we should just kick off with a little bit of a delve into your past. So when you look back, what were some of those very formative experiences in your early life that shaped you and have led you to where you are today, James?
Good question. I need to do a bit of soul searching myself here. So, very early days, sport was a huge part of my life. My dad was a massive sports nut. And yeah, my earliest memories are being on range watching him play rugby or cricket or, sitting on his back while watching rugby special on a Sunday evening. Me and my brother, at a very young age, playing in the lounge with small balls running at each other and hitting each other. So, sport always played a huge part in our lives. And, I think growing up, certainly through school, sport was something that really gave you a sense of purpose.
Right.
I wasn't the most academic. I think I probably was, but I didn't understand learning. But I got sport. So I very much went down that path to the detriment of my academics, really. So from an early, you're getting a picture, me, my dad, my brother, and my mum pulling her hair out, wanting to talk about everything other than sport. And
the three of you just carried away with sport.
The three of us just getting carried away from sport. But, mum was good as gold and sunbathed on a cricket, boundary and all that sort of stuff. So no, it was a lovely upbringing, great family, and thoroughly enjoyed, all the activities that we do, but which was mostly physical activity based.
Right. Okay. And, subsequent to education and those kind of things, you went into the military, didn't you? So what led you into the military and a military life?
So I didn't do as well as I ought to have done at school.
Okay.
But I had the opportunity to pursue a professional rugby career. So my dad, and this is a very rugby nerdy thing to say, but bear with me. Harlequins at the time, so rugby went professional in 1996-97. That was when I was 18.
Okay.
So the opportunity then to play professional rugby became a reality. My dad was a Harlequins man. Now, Harlequins were one of the few clubs that didn't want to turn professional because they had a load of city workers on six-figure salaries.
Okay.
And
they couldn't replicate those salaries.
They couldn't replicate the salaries. So their squad would have been decimated had they gone, right, give up your city job and come and work, be a professional rugby player for £30,000 a year. So Harlequins were dead set anti-professional rugby. I went to Richmond, and Richmond was the first club that went pop. So my dad kind of did a big "I told you so." There's no
Should have followed your
rugby.
heart.
Yeah. So I had contract offers from Bristol and La Rochelle in France, and my dad answered the phone, and I was present at both conversations where he said no on the phone to both options and told me to get a real job.
So emotionally, how did that make you feel? It must have been your dream to be a professional rugby player if you've grown up around.
Yeah, I mean, speaking to my dad later on in life, I think the La Rochelle offer was for a young person, not just to go and play rugby, but to experience different culture and all that
formative
sort of
in a
stuff.
different way as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, the La Rochelle thing, my dad kind of acknowledged in later life. Maybe he should have let me do it, but it gave me the opportunity. One door shuts and another opens. To what can I do that can let me play sport and in my dad's world be considered a real job.
Yeah, get paid a salary.
Yeah, and my granddad was Royal Air Force, my uncle was a Royal Marine, so I had a military influence around me, knowing about how much sport they played in the military and all that. It just felt like okay, well that's the sport. That's the real job that will get me the most sport. So so jumped in both foot into the Royal Air Force, and then had a 15-year career, but a really, really fun time with great colleagues, and travelled the world and got to play my sport.
Right. So you played rugby for...
Yeah, Royal Air Force, and then coached the Royal Air Force and Combined Services as well. So yeah, that was kind of from the moment of joining to the moment of leaving. I was involved in structured, semi-professional sport.
Isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, the army are known as tracksuit soldiers. They turn up to work, but really they're army rugby players. The Royal Air Force weren't at the beginning of my career in that way. But towards the end of the career, the RAF were recognising it was a good recruitment tool, and professionalised the rugby to a greater extent as a way to attract, sports people, which, we know to be largely, with the exceptions, good employees, good transferable skills, good teamwork, good work ethic, which is all of the skills that you want in the military. So, that recruitment piece was something I was involved with. I didn't lead on, but certainly it was with me the whole time we went through the Royal Air Force.
I mean, if you look back now, that 15 years in kind of military life, I know akin to playing rugby in a lot of that time, but when you look back at that time in military, how did that shape and change you as a individual, James?
I don't know if any of my ex-colleagues are listening, but they'll just remember me to be the person who was away playing sport a lot of the time. But I think in sport and the military at the time, you learn a lot from the best leaders, and you learn even more from the worst. And, poor leaders in those environments show themselves up massively, and, I'm not going to name names, but the leaders that you'd kind of really get behind, go over the top with, whatever the kind of term that you want to put to it, they have a fingerprint on you throughout your whole life, and you start to understand what motivates people and what makes people care, makes people feel valued, makes all of the things that we know now to be good leadership qualities. You couldn't have quantified that then, because the early 2000s particularly was a transitional time, because obviously the sport I played went professional. And what did that mean? So the first training sessions were, you'd go in, you'd do a morning session, you'd have a stodgy lunch, and then you do an afternoon session. Nobody knew about rest. Nobody knew about strength and conditioning. No one knew about
nutrition,
all of that stuff. So that was new and pioneering. And then the military was going through a massive transition as well, because we went from, in my time, 80,000 in the Royal Air Force down to less than 40,000 in that 15 years.
15-year period.
Yeah. So that was a huge transition. 2000, obviously, homosexuality was legalised. So I joined in 97.
Yeah.
So I had to sign something to say that I wasn't gay. But these things are kind of informative, because straight away you sign that piece of paper and you think that being homosexual is a bad thing.
At a young age, you're forced to sign that piece of paper.
So we that whole period of the early 2000s, especially with conflicts going on, it was quite conflict heavy. Obviously, the Second Iraq War, leading then into the Balkans. So I joined during the Balkans, then the Second Iraq War, and then obviously Afghanistan. It was it was kind of chaotic in the military was changing in front of you with technological advances and leaning up and downsizing and going through that process, where I was, working alongside civil servants who are, ultimately looking at cutting jobs, and you're having to.
It's not the most positive environment to
but
be around.
Exactly. But the military has this amazing knack of creating camaraderie in adverse conditions. So it was nothing that we weren't trained to deal with. It was just a necessary evil, I guess. But at the time, it felt unnecessary on top of fighting conflicts.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
And at what point did you decide, right, you've done your 15 years, it's time to leave? Was there was a moment in time where you thought, I need to come out of the military? And how did that feel at that time, James?
So I had a heart attack on a rugby pitch at the age of 30. And so I didn't have the opportunity to leave on my terms. So I had the heart attack. Got medically downgraded, as people with injuries and whatever do. They didn't know what to do with me because there were very few 30-year-olds who'd had a heart condition in the military. So that was difficult. I didn't get the best care with regards to my return to work and all that sort of stuff. There was a lot to deal with. As a 30-year-old, when you have a heart condition, it was a tear in the artery from an impact injury, by the way.
Okay. So it wasn't hereditary.
No,
it wasn't lifestyle.
No,
it was
a tear in the artery from an impact injury.
Right.
Should have seen the other bloke. Nothing wrong with him. So called work. That was on the Saturday. You had to wait for everyone to get into work. So I was on a day job. Had to wait for everyone to get into work at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning to then me to call them from the hospital bed. The guy that I called didn't really know what to say or do. Then I didn't hear anything for a long period. And anyway, I transitioned back into work, and then was due a load of courses, been promoted, loving my career, loving being in the military. And then, got pulled off my promotion course because they said that I wasn't medically of a grade that could fulfill it. And I was doing really well on it. And then about 3 or 4 weeks later, got called to admin, where I got delivered the news that I've got to vacate my marriage quarter in a month's time. So that was it. That was right. You go.
So it wasn't a choice. It was circumstance.
Yeah. So that was
imposed upon you.
Yeah. In the end, they made the right call because I had another 2 heart attacks. But
Be smart and laugh. Say that.
What else do you do?
Yeah.
It's one of those things. So ironically, the second heart attack was caused by having wide arteries and the stent didn't mesh. And then the third one was a rogue one, which has another story somewhere over there. But but the way in which you're just told that you're not fit for service, and off you go, and you've got a month left in your marriage quarter, and your
family's out, and they're in.
Yeah. So with a new baby and all that sort of stuff. So it was that was difficult. So not being able to play the sport you love and being taken out of your career at the same time had big consequences. But I was lucky.
It must have just felt like somebody just taking your legs away and just the wind taken out of you completely.
Yeah. I don't think you realise it until that structure and framework of not going to training. I went into coaching, so I was always around people. So the difference between coaching and playing is obviously you don't have that changing room kind of thing. You're on the
camaraderie.
You're on
the outside looking in.
Yeah. So and then that military structure that you're so used to, and just daft things. Your medical checkups, your dental checks, you're being told where to be at what time and when, and not having to think about what you wear to go to work, because and all that sort of stuff. So very quickly taken away. So a couple of months later, it was quite. You felt quite bare, quite naked. But I was really fortunate because sport transitioned me out of the military, because I was coaching at Basingstoke at the time. Post heart attack, went into coaching. Basingstoke, took me on as director of rugby, and then soon after that did London Irish, Daneshill School. So had this kind of coaching career.
So that kind of ingrained in you that rugby guy,
Yeah,
experience, taking that experience elsewhere, kind of made you
yeah,
make that transition and gave you a softer
yeah, and
landing.
that all those skills that you take from sport, and in the community, you say about strength of community at the beginning, but this is probably where it came from, because I've relied so heavily on my community. So that recognition that without that community, I could be in a very different place,
Yeah.
psychologically, and
Yeah.
in all facets, really. So that was my transitioning into the military and then transitioning out of the military.
Right.
But the 15 years I had, I thank my colleagues for doing the shifts when I was away. I made up for it at Christmas and things like that. But yeah, it was it was a fantastic career.
Yeah, great. And how did you end up at Bournemouth Rugby Club then?
So I played one first team game for Bournemouth as a 17-year-old before going off to Richmond.
Okay.
So as a second row 17-year-old, one first team game. So I joke about having one first team game at Bournemouth, but I'm very proud of that one game that I had, because to be a 17-year-old playing first team rugby at any level, I think is quite cool. And yeah, Bournemouth holds a special place in my heart. I joined as a 11, 12-year-old. The friends you make, through life. I mean, one of them put a LinkedIn post up yesterday, who I haven't seen in a long time, but he was one of my first meets when I joined Bournemouth Rugby. So those relationships last with you, and I felt that strength of bond. And then, I'm very grateful that they set me on my course, really. I mean, my dad obviously was a big influence, and my PE teacher was a big influence, but without actually going through the doors of a club, wouldn't have led to the opportunities that I've had in my life. I might be somewhere better, I don't know, but yeah, I've had a great life, and Bournemouth set me on that journey.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? It's that kind of role of serendipity in life.
Yeah.
Like, where would you have been if you hadn't had that impact, injury and heart attack?
Yeah.
Would you have still been in the military? Would you have pursued a different career?
Exactly.
Post-military. You
No,
can't.
you
You can't join the dots
No.
up, can you? You just
No.
got to get on with it and deal with what's in front of you and seize the opportunities.
Yeah, and I think when a lot happens at once, you have nowhere else to go other than kind of grip it and go, oh, we just got to do the best we can,
Yeah, I'm going to go back to that, because actually when you raise that makes me stop and think about, when you reflect, the wind being completely taken out yourselves, military life taken away, playing sport being taken away from you. Clearly you showed great resilience to pick yourself up, find a route, deal with it, find somewhere to live, get a job at Basingstoke, do all of those things. But there'll be people listening to this podcast that may be for different reasons in a dark kind of place now. What lessons do you think you would take away and learn from that experience that got you through that experience?
Right, well, you're taking me down the path of going even further down before bouncing up. So after my third heart attack, the first two kind of had a logic to me, which was I made a tackle, I had a tear in the artery, I felt it happen, and the second one, the stent didn't mesh, the artery was wide. The third one was rogue, and this all happened within. So when I was 30, I had a heart attack. When I was 31, I had a heart attack. When I was 32, my dad died of a dissected artery. When I was 34, I had my third heart attack, and then that was kind of me going, oh my goodness, like, can my 30s just stop? Like, it was brutal.
Enough.
I'm out of the military, I can't play sport, and all this is happening to me, and I've got a young family, and they deserve better. Like, that whole kind of woe me, but woe them too. I think that's always at the forefront of your mind, isn't it? So after the third one, then I sadly spiraled, and to the outside world, I was thriving. Coaching London Irish, got the Danes Director of Sport job, was really kind of outwardly doing all right.
The show looked good from the outside.
And then my home became my castle. It was dark. It didn't want it was as dark as you can get without going the final bit. It was pretty horrendous. So my oh god, here we go. So my wife left me. She saw me through and then left me. Understandably, I'd have fallen out of love with me. And that prompted me to, well, Will, my brother, who's director of rugby at Bournemouth, said, come down and coach here. You need to do something. You need to get out of the house. You're selling it anyway.
Right.
Come down and
That's what drove you here.
come down and coach with me. And I needed family, and I needed a support structure. And yeah, so I came back to Bournemouth as Will's assistant coach for the first time ever, because he was my captain at Medians, my assistant coach at Basingstoke. I'd coached him in the military, because Will did a very short stint, if he's listening, in the military.
Yeah.
And for the first time, he was director of head coach at the time, and I was assisting under him. But it was what I needed. It was me coming in with no pressure, allowing me to do what I love, which is coach. Making bonds with new people and being back at the club where it all started and all that sort of stuff.
So the things that got you through then, that I take from that, is the people around you that loved you, that supported you, that took you through the other side of the darkness.
Yeah.
And then doubling down on all of the things that you loved in life.
Yeah.
And trying to re-energise yourself and get momentum again.
Yeah, and another friend of mine from the military called Combat Stress, and I had a call late at night, about 10:30 at night, from Combat Stress saying, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" And they said, "Well, one of your former colleagues is worried about you and has asked us to call." So there were loads of little bits in there that
people that are around
that just somebody feeling like they aren't necessarily equipped to, or they know that I'm just going to brush them off.
Yeah.
Intervene to that extent that they contacted a military mental health charity to check on me, which was incredible, really. And then obviously the support of your family and the community, like you say. So I owe a lot to the game, but I owe a lot to the people within the game.
Yeah, no, definitely. So at this point, you'd landed at Bournemouth Rugby, assistant coach.
Yeah,
dusted yourself off, starting life again to a degree.
Yeah.
When did you, and I suppose you and Will, decide that there was this real potential at the club and that you really wanted to engage and get involved with it?
So, I mean, again, it was by accident, as these things often are. But I turned up at the first training session, and there was no grip on the balls, and it was raining, and someone hadn't got new balls for 2 years, and I kind of stormed in, coming from, being blessed within the Royal Air Force Combined Services, London Irish, wherever, going in and going, "The lads can't train with these balls. What are you doing?" And they said, "We can't afford to get new ones." And it was the rugby was rich, but the commercial side was poor.
Yeah.
And people had done really well to make good, but there were obviously shortfallings. After the first season of coaching, it became apparent that actually would be better served with me finding him money. You're surrounded by good coaches, so I was just another coach, but he would have been better off with me going and working on the commercial side. So it was a choice between Will and I, and Phil came in as, well, Phil was already chairman, but Phil had a strategy in place, who's obviously come back as chairman again, but Phil had a strategy in play, and part of that was the boosting of the commercial. The know-how and the people with the emphasis, because sport's unique, and lots of people love sport, but the business of sport actually is quite unsexy.
Yeah.
It's if you're in the business of sport, you rarely get to see the sport.
Yeah, particularly amateur sport, because it's about knocking on doors and asking for money and asking for support, with giving very little perhaps, and this is why I think you've succeeded, because you didn't do it this way, but perhaps offering very little in return.
Yeah. At the offset, it was get them in low and watch them grow. We knew that anyone sponsoring weren't going to come in with big checks, but we knew that we had a narrative, which is what we'll talk about in a bit. But we knew that we had a narrative. We'd done our analysis, and we knew that there was a real opportunity to do something good. But we didn't want philanthropy. We wanted people like you to come in at a level that it feels like you're doing a good thing, and you supported the community program, but the ability to grow within that. So as we grow, you grow, or not, and to de-risk it, because I think that they'd had a major sponsor or two pull out, which was part of the cash shortfall for the year or two preceding us arriving. And if you get one big sponsor and they pull out, it's a bloody great hole to fill. So So, just doing it in a really sustainable but not an ambitious way with the targets we set ourselves.
But that sponsorship is akin to a commercial business, isn't it? That has two major clients.
Yeah.
You lose a major client, and you're done.
It's the same in
fill
business.
the pot
Absolutely
with
same in business.
lots of clients paying smaller amounts.
Yeah.
And you become more resilient and sustainable.
Exactly.
It's that model within sport, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what made you, and I think you've partly answered this during the course of this conversation, but what made you decide, actually, if I'm going to get involved, I'm going to drive the commercial side, I am really going to create two communities? Because the club's always been the club, hasn't it? It's always had this sense of, community within those that play.
Yeah.
Both from a very young age through to those that have been in the first, seconds, thirds, still coming and supporting. So that was probably there, and you probably amplified that. But you really then said, all right, I'm going to create this community within the business community and within our supporters. And can you remember why and how you kind of stumbled on that? Or was it a very fixed strategy that you set out to achieve?
Sport costs money, and we didn't want to be the club that didn't do girls rugby or didn't do wheelchair rugby or didn't do any of the forms of rugby that we do based on the fact that we're not getting money in. And sport costs money. So we had to figure out how much it was that we needed to raise. More importantly, the clients that we brought on, and obviously you were one of them, helped us form our strategy, and that there was something in it that hooked you. And we now, all these years later, want to be a one-stop shop for brand alignment, brand awareness, B2B. The B2C is a slower burn, but with our membership now, we can start to do that, and we're doing things to really boost that B2C offering. To create experience, we're an events company essentially, but sport is part of that. But how do you make it mass market? Rugby's niche. It's a big-sided game that's really complicated. I mean, the people who formed it couldn't have made it harder for us. So how do we make it mass market and make it attractive to everyone? So yeah, we've got a calendar of events that always has a rugby piece to it, but it's more based around the community and the values of rugby than it is necessarily having to go on a Saturday afternoon and watch a game of rugby, which is a great spectacle, but it's not for everyone. And weekends post-COVID, and we've got all these different things to
competing forces at the weekends at 3 o'clock on a 2 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon when you play.
Exactly. So that was part of it, and then it was creating the narrative, which actually was very easy based on when you had all the evidence in front of you. Actually created a town kind of sense of duty. So if you think by population, by comparison, we're comparable to Bristol. They've got two professional football teams, rugby, basketball, you name it, they've got it. The same amount of universities as us. In fact, have they got 2 or 3 unis?
I think they've only got 2.
Yeah, so we've got 3, right? So we've even got more universities than that. So take a city like Bristol. By population, we're comparable. But we only, and at the time, had a League One football club in any kind of professional sport. And then when you do a deeper dive, other than football and Hampshire cricket, to get a family experience, spectator experience that isn't grassroots, you have to go to Exeter, Bristol, Bath, Reading, Guildford and Brighton on an arc. Right. So actually, if we can create something that isn't football and Hampshire cricket, but actually is an experience for a family, and we're never going to be first choice, but if they can wake up on an autumnal sunny morning and go, what are we doing today? I don't know, but we need fresh air. Well, Bournemouth are at home, and we make it accessible. Then we can start to capture that market. So we wanted to boost the audience. We wanted to have the staff of our sponsors feel like they can come down and be part of it and looked after. So that was kind of the one part of the narrative. The other thing, and this is a really big one for all the businesses listening, is our business community is unique. And when we did a look into that, and I've done this in Reading, in Basingstoke, in Southwest London, business owners never have their business headquartered, their children schooled, live and walk down the high street of the same postcode the business is headquartered. they always live out of town, travel in, is an absolute rarity. That on a critical mass, we have as many business owners who feel such a sense of community based on the fact that they live and pride of where they live, because everybody wants the schools to be the best because their children are schooled there, the streets to be clean, crime to be low. And actually, post-COVID and moving in, certainly, with what we know about, the town centres, for example, the values of rugby become really prominent again. And so rugby's complicated and big, but everyone knows that the values of rugby are good values. Yeah. And actually, there's a space in society. Yeah, there's a space in society for those values.
At Evolve, we exist to help business owners and leaders like you start, grow, and exit with purpose. Whether it's coaching, peer groups, strategic advice, leadership and development, or just needing some financial clarity, we're here to support every step of your business journey. If you're ready to evolve, we'd love to help you take that very next step. In this day and age, with tech, with AI, with everything that's happening, there's a lot that's saying to counter that or to stand out from the crowd. Everybody may end up competing together because tech lowers the bar, kind of thing. But one of the things that's going to make you different is if you can create a community. So this is very much a business-orientated question, I suppose. If you can create a sense of belonging, a sense of community. So what's your advice to somebody listening to this that wants to create that sense of community and sense of belonging within their business, with their team and with their clients? You've done it. I said at the start, I think it's your best accolade, and I think you're amazing at it. And part of it is your force of nature, part of it is your personality, but part of it is that you really believe in it. So how would you recommend somebody goes about creating their own community?
That's a really good question. Two things about the tech piece to the I'm going to just highlight as what we are competing with. So a competitor of yours, I don't know if he is actually, Roger Whittle, Dodge.
No, he's not a competitor at all.
He's not a competitor. He's complimentary.
He's a great guy.
Yeah. No, he is, but you know what I mean, in terms of the podcast world. But, a friend of Bournemouth Rugby, a friend of the town, listening to some of his stuff, but he posted on LinkedIn the other day about how he hates the word authentic. Yeah. And it's because, obviously, tech has everyone needs to be their authentic selves, and and what is authenticity, and so on and so forth, and then it goes into, God, how deep can we go into this? But I've got a different persona sat here with you as what I do in front of an audience, as I do sat in front of my family at Christmas. Like you wear different guises and different things, right? And but we really devaluing really important words through technology. Yeah. So authentic, if it's becoming a word that people kind of do an eye rolly emoji and a yawn at, right? That's sad. But
because 10 years ago it meant something,
and it absolutely we need to start putting values back. So when I'm talking about building that sense of community, it's giving meaning to the words that you're representing. Okay. That's the critical part. Yeah. So going on and saying, my personal integrity, my personal values are trust, teamwork, and respect. And that is my integrity. So if that line's crossed, I can't work with people. Trust, teamwork, respect. And that's got meaning. It's got meaning from sport. It's got meaning from the military. It's lived experience. And the values that we apply to Bournemouth Rugby, authentic would be in there in the we want to be unique in ourselves. We want people to be able to be comfortable enough to walk into our environment being themselves, and that people are accepted on multiple levels by doing that. So I don't really want to, so tech is dumbing down words and values. So if reverse engineering.
Do you think it's starting to do that with the word community then as well?
Well, and now
is that becoming a bit glib now?
It is, to the point that people are now going, it's a movement, not a community. Yeah. It's happening. Everyone goes, no, we're now a movement. We're not a community. Communities are stagnant. Movements are forward propelling. You're like, yeah. Oh, right. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. And I talk about wanting to have people around that support the business and we engage with, that belong. And it's creating a sense of belonging, which I think is probably part of that community thing.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And well, sense of belonging is, well, it's one of Maslow's
Yeah.
first hierarchical needs, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, people feeling safe and secure, and that's what we want to do. That's what a community is. Maslow's hierarchy of needs: a sense of belonging, safe and secure. If you can get those things right, everything else actually is,
when you put a bit of purpose in there as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that to me is critical, and you can't lose sight of that. But it's putting the actual meaning to those things. The second thing, and I'm going to name check him, as I had a meeting with Joe Hayes, who's in the room, who and we were talking about this, and he's got a really, really good idea coming up. Watch this space. But values, and there's another thing, company values. You've got to have company values, and people are now making money out of giving people company values. But those values, again, are being partly diminished because it tends to be the company raving about the values, not the employees.
Yeah.
And we at Bournemouth Rugby, I think in 2017-18, we had a culture that had the membership getting the first team promoted, and we'll acknowledge and accept that the first team got promoted on the shoulders of the membership, because there was this real, kind of sense of belonging and that real sense of community, and it matters. And this time round, we're not there yet. Any member in the club, there's brilliant things about the club, but do we have that collective sense of belonging, that collective, is it a safe place for us all? And what I mean by that is people putting their head above the parapet, having a difference of opinion, having those discussions. And I still don't think we're there, because it takes time. And that's the other thing. If you're going to build a community or a movement, then it doesn't just happen. You
can't just come up with some words, stick them on a wall, and go, "That's it."
That's it.
And actually, with companies that I've seen and worked with and have succeeded, I think they really engage with their employees about, well, what do we represent? Who are we?
Yeah.
How do we behave? And that drives a value set, because it becomes from here.
Absolutely. And role
behavior and actual.
And role modeling, you're a role model. You're a well-reputed business person. You're doing it over again. Change your direction, but you're a role model. So you live the values. You don't have values that you don't hold dear to your heart, and you want people around you that conform to those values, but also challenge you and all that sort. And that's the safe space, isn't it?
It is,
where people feel
definitely
safe. So role modeling is absolutely tantamount to creating that community by just living. How many times can we say values in one podcast? But living it,
living and breathing it,
living
and
breathing
it when people don't, isn't it? Because
and that's what we demand.
When it goes wrong, and I made this mistake, is there were people within Inspire 10 years in that shouldn't have been there, weren't living and breathing the values, and I kind of accepted it because financially it was working.
Yeah.
And it just took us down. It just took the whole business to a
We
place
want them to become
despair.
role models.
And then you go, right, deal with that, exit them, live and breathe, and see what happens, and you thrive again.
Yeah. You want them to become the role models, don't you? Like what we expect of the first team. The hardest job in a rugby club, whether people like it or not, and speaking to the volunteers and stuff, the hardest thing is to be a player.
Yeah.
Because you've got to bleed for the club, but the expectations on you to role model, to train, to do your own work, to have your nutrition, to have a young family, and to tell them that you're going away for a whole Saturday, and all of that stuff. A first team player's job done well, and we're expecting them to be role models. Once they are, and most are, and we've got a fantastic group of players, then that permeates down to the youth. And then actually, the sidelines take care of themselves, because the players, everybody looks up. But the sidelines take care of themselves. It doesn't need to be the parents to role model the children. The children on the pitch can role model the parents. No parents are going to shout from the touchline if all the children are being really well behaved and courteous on it. It's just ridiculous. So the players play a huge part in this, like employees do in a business. And you, as a business leader, want your guys to role model for the next cohort, for how you project the business outwardly and all that stuff.
Absolutely. But the challenge there is for Will, isn't it? In a performance environment where you're trying to get promotion, you're striving. I think you're second in the league at the moment, so good luck. And
unbeaten but second. Yeah. Let's get there.
Unbeaten in second, but is at what point, would Will take a compromise that the player isn't performing in terms of the role model role, but is absolutely the star player on the pitch? Do you think that could happen?
Yeah, it does happen. Absolutely, it happens, and football's probably a better example for it. But no, yeah, absolutely happens. And good people make good rugby players. Not all good rugby players are good people.
Okay.
And we want good people first. And has Will been challenged by that? Yeah, of course he has. He comes back to a new squad. Not some of the old and bold were still there, weren't they? But Sammy Harcastle at 44 and he retired last year. So some of his old guys, but then it's the reliance on the Joe Reeses and the Lucas to be those conduits between Will and the younger players. But post-COVID, the younger players have a different outlook. I mean, the drinking culture's gone. I mean, Will's been involved in rugby the whole time. If I went back to coaching, having now a bit of sabbatical, you're dealing with a different group of people that have different motivators, different drivers.
Yeah. So before we touched on the values of rugby, which we're starting to talk about, you and Will did leave the club. You did succeed. You did generate this revenue. You did. Will got promotion for the club
Twice.
Mm. So, but you did leave the club. How did that feel? I'm not going to talk about the circumstances around it. I don't know, don't need to know, but I want to talk about that kind of feeling perhaps of loss at that time.
I think, well, we both felt it in very different ways. Will got us promoted, in record style. And actually the squad were flying. And then he, after 4 or 5 games of the new season, got sacked. And I'm not going to labour on it. But the importance, my feeling within that was, and you're better off getting Phil on the next podcast to discuss that whole thing, because therein lies a whole different story. But the sport and the commerciality of sport have to be coupled.
Right.
You can't have success with one without the other.
Yeah.
And they've got to move, yes, they ebb and flow and the whole point, but they've got to be a coherent club-wide message. Yeah. And with Will, when you get rid of a coach, and I think this is the same in any sport, the new incumbent will naturally have to take time, and there's a trust thing, and that destabilizing. If you've got a strong commercial faction and they see decisions that they think are weird or can't understand, then they start to question the organisation. And the thing with sport is it's very outward facing. So it was in the Echo and it was everywhere, and so you're fielding calls all over the place. Crisis management, really. I mean, and we didn't have a PR and comms guy. We've got one now, but at the time we didn't have a PR and comms guy, and that crisis management on what we were dealing with, and it became really destabilizing, and it was a really good lesson for me on the kind of importance of each of the pillars within the organisation. Yeah. And that goes for the community. Our community programme is a separate pillar as well. Obviously, it was what you got behind, which was our schools programme, which is flying and does amazingly well. But that's a different pillar again. And
you start to destabilise one, and it all becomes unstable.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you can't afford to then go into the schools if the commercial gets rocked, and actually then that purpose piece starts to come into thing. And I'm not saying that the sacking a coach is wrong, if it deserves it, whatever. But people need to take outward-facing dismissals in sport seriously. Yeah. Arne Slot at the moment, obviously Liverpool lost last night in the Champions League. He won the league last year, and now they're talking about in November.
How many days has he got
left? Well, people forget that Diego Jota died over the summer and what impact that's had on Liverpool Football Club. Yeah. That it's not just the performance on a pitch. It's just so many things.
And you're right, aren't you? That alignment of all of the pillars needing to work. And, you do look at kind of the success that AFC Bournemouth had. It was because you had Eddie Howe, manager, doing everything with the players and the playing side. You had Jeff Mostyn driving the commercial and being the external voice. you took one of them away and it probably wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, and they've been such good role models for us, our younger sibling.
Yeah.
We're 137 years old,
Younger
122,
siblings.
but they're a younger sibling. But no, they've been such a good role model. And watching, I mean, you know, Jeff's been extremely supportive, as Rob Mitchell has, of our journey, because we engaged with him quite early to say, you guys are doing great things. Why wouldn't we want to learn from you? You know, and they've been open books. In fact, Jeff's come into the game on Saturday, for example. So you're still very supportive of what we're doing. So yeah, you've got Jeff and you've got Rob, and then you had Eddie. And I think the biggest call was, and I haven't spoken to Jeff. It's in his book probably. I need to read it. I've got a version. Sorry, Jeff. But it's you know, bringing Eddie Howe back. Because he left to Burnley, and
then he came back.
The club felt betrayed in a way. But to bring him back, to have the bravery to bring him back because it was a good fit, and understanding the DNA and having that relationship and trust, and that pillar and you know that kind of clear direction of travel is absolutely paramount.
And how did it feel when you and Will came back and walked through those doors again? Because you came back too.
Yeah, we came back together, which was I mean it was busy. Unfinished business this week because we're 2 leagues lower, and I took on, you know, not a lot of sponsors, and you know we had COVID between, remember, so I'm not dissing anyone at all.
Life changed dramatically for us all.
Yeah, and people did the best they could do, and you know when you're in that situation, you cut costs, and then you're in that downward spiral, and you can't put on the environment for the players, and you start to hemorrhage players, and so on and so forth. So it was a really, really difficult time. So yeah, me and Will were nervous about coming back because the club needed, and we're still not there actually. I'm talking about it needed stabilising, and it needed that kind of forming stage, and we're still in the forming stage. You know, the news that Drew's, you know,
one of our shareholders
has exited this week, but he's done incredible stuff over the last 18 months, and it's a big emotional investment and a big time commitment, and you know, Drew, like I said, absolutely go and spend time with the family and enjoy it. But because it's so emotive, and because it has that level of thing, to then try and galvanise. And we've spoken about building community, and that takes time because you've got to be the role model and walk the walk.
And I suppose you've got to rebuild trust again.
And all that sort of stuff. So we're further ahead than we were. We're still in the forming stage, but we're really pleased with how we're approaching it, which I think is the most important thing at the moment, that we are completely at peace with Will delivering the rugby provision he's delivering, and I've tweaked a few things commercially to make it even more mass market than last time, and the introduction of more events and the more touch points for sponsors, and we're doing some stuff at the moment on the development of digitalising a lot of what we're doing. So the introduction of a podcast, maybe, who knows?
Watch this space.
But you know, we're still in that forming stage. But Will and I are really at peace because we had clarity on coming into it and how we wanted to approach it, and the support that we've had from all of the owners, and now Matt Barker being the sole owner, is, and therein lies the thing about Jeff, you know, Matt Barker, the pillars, Will, you know, me as the Rob Mitchell type thing, you know, it feels like Phil, obviously, you know, it feels like we've got a spine, and now we just need to be true to us and the membership, and then the product that we're trying to do. So, yeah.
So as we start to kind of bring the conversation to a conclusion, we've touched on it, but I really do want to explore these values of rugby. So what are the key values that rugby teaches young players, do you think?
I think with what we're seeing with the mental health epidemic at the moment, in, you know, certainly under 25s, and you know the stats are there to show it. I think the teamwork, the resilience, the strength to support each other. I saw a comment the other day where they said that you know, people are told, you know, talk if you've got a mental health issue, reach out. It's not that easy. Like, I was there, and you're in a room, and you don't, you know, you don't think anyone cares, and so having that community and network around you to have those interventions takes strength on those people's parts to actually, have an intervention. So yeah, trust, resilience, trust way over honesty. Honesty, I think you can have different kinds of honesty.
Okay.
I don't agree with honesty all the time. Brutal honesty, does my bum look big in this? Type stuff.
Yeah.
But trust
is really important.
Trust that if I do tell a white lie, it's well intentioned.
Yeah.
So that trust overrides it, type thing. But yeah, resilience, teamwork, respect.
And they're all values that you hold dear, and you probably go back to your childhood with your father, with Will, playing rugby at clubs and being taught those values from an early age.
Yeah, and I think that we're pretty good people. I think that's all you want to be, isn't it? When we're all pushing up the daisies.
Good humans.
Yeah, when you're pushing up the daisies, what do you want to be remembered for? I just want to be known as a good person. So those values that create good people, like I said, we only want good people. If you're a good rugby player and not a good person, you're not for us. And there probably is a club for you, but it isn't with us.
And how do those rugby values show up for you in everyday life away from Bournemouth Rugby Club?
The cost of living crisis at the moment, taking a wage cut to go back to Bournemouth Rugby, and I'm not saying that my door was being beaten down with anything else, but but the resilience to deal with stuff that's going on in the world at the moment, I think it's huge. I think just the strength of community. I think the we've never needed each other more, and we're blessed. I'd say in this BCP, in this conurbation, we're blessed because people do care, and because business owners live down here, children are schooled down here.
And what about rugby or sport generally in youngsters, creating a sense of drive, ambition, and dare I say it, in this modern world, a sense of competitive spirit? Where do you sit with that? And do you think that sport does that for youngsters in this day and age?
Yeah, and I think the jobs market probably is highlighting the need for that competitive spirit and the need for resilience, because, it sounds all doom and gloom. It's not. If I don't want Rachel Reeves to put the entrepreneurs in the room off, but, I think if you've got drive and passion, and look, it doesn't need to be sport. Rugby will equip you, sport will equip you with certain values. I would have loved to have gone into, let's say, musical theatre. Passion of mine can be the next one. But, I would have loved to have done it. It wasn't an option. Because sport and musical theatre were during the same thing at school, and you couldn't do both, right? And I may fulfil it in my later life. I don't know. Life's too short. But
I'll come and watch the performance.
You come and watch the performance. But my point being is that whatever you're doing, be passionate about it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use the word dodge, authentic, but in the true sense of, do it for you, do it for the right reasons, and that's what sport equips people with, which is a beautiful thing, and the persistence and will to succeed. So when you talk about competitive nature, I've played in games where we've had narrow losses, but I've been more proud than I have in big wins. And you take that nugget away with you, and you realise that actually a narrow loss can feel 10 times better than a large win.
Yeah, definitely. So as we kind of round up, I've got 3 or 4 questions just to round up on as we close the podcast. One is, what's your ambition for Bournemouth Rugby Club? What does good look like for the rugby club over the next few years?
Promotion, 200 businesses. So we were flitting around 150 for about 9 months, give or take. So to push on and what I mean by 200 businesses isn't at any cost. People coming into our community who want to be in the community and get the community,
engage with
it, and be in the room even if you're not in the room, type stuff. So that's really important to bring stability to the membership. They deserve it. There's been a lot of turmoil over the last period, so they deserve that. And I think, like I said, Will's second promotion will have to be on the shoulders of the membership and the culture of the club. Will get promoted without that now.
Yeah.
But if we're going to go again, then we're going to need to do on the shoulders of the club.
Brilliant. And if you could leave the listeners with one kind of snippet or one thought about the power of community, what would it be?
Well, if you've listened all the way through this, then you'll know how personal that is to me with regards to having community taken away and how vulnerable you feel. But having the community come to your aid at probably your deepest, darkest moment is fulfilling on more levels than anyone can actually realise. But at a really local level, i.e. you're a business owner, you know, the world feels like it's against you. You know, just being in a room and creating those
with
discussions with like-minded people.
Sharing.
Exactly. You never know where it's going to go. So yeah, but even in a room of competitors, you know, and that's the beauty of it. Back yourself.
Absolutely. And I apologise because I think this could be a hard question to ask you, but I need to ask it of you. If you could go back to you, age 34, you know, 3 heart attacks, just having lost your dad was key to you, what words of advice would you give that 34-year-old in hindsight now?
To make your bed in the morning. Just one task.
All right. Do one thing.
Do one thing.
One step.
One step. Get out of bed and make it. And that will just then lead to the next and to the next. And it is cliche because obviously the American Marine general is that big thing that he talks about. But yeah, just having that sense of purpose, whatever that purpose is.
Yeah.
Get up, make your bed, and do the next thing. So that would be huge. And I didn't for periods. And yeah, you have to.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Always end the podcast with the question of, you know, forget the rugby club, but what's your personal definition of success?
To keep Charlotte happy, my other half, and that's not easy. No,
you just got yourself some brownie points and just lost them.
I know. To have a balance where I'm feeling like I'm winning at work and winning at home, and that's not always easy.
Yeah.
You know, if you marked me at the moment, it would probably be work of 6 and home life for 4. But if I'm being hard on myself, well, I'm not succeeding at either. So you need to, you know, to do one, you got to do the other.
Succeed in both.
You have to succeed in both.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's a great definition. And if people want to know more about you or get involved with the rugby club, where can they go, James?
Bournemouth-rugby.co.uk. My email's james.croker, Charlie Romeo Oscar Kilo Echo Romeo at bournemouth-rugby.co.uk, or just go on the website, or come down, or speak to somebody who is involved. You don't have to speak to hopefully too many people before they can point you in the right direction, but everyone's welcome. You don't need to understand the laws, you don't need to even like rugby. What we're building is ambition in the town. And if it's not AFC Bournemouth, then what is it? And it's not. You know, we're in sports franchise model now. We don't have the physical infrastructure, so you know it has to be a team that can go through the leagues, and we're well equipped to do it. So yeah, we're backing ourselves, but we do need everybody's support for it.
Fantastic, James. Thank you for being so brutally honest on this podcast, sharing your story. There's some really valuable lessons, and when people do open up like you do, people will take something away from that, and we don't know who that may have helped. So thank you for doing that. But thank you for showing your pride, your passion for rugby, for sport, for the values it represents, and in particular for everything you're doing at Bournemouth Rugby Club. Thank you, James.
Thank you, family. Thank you.
Sometimes you start a conversation on this podcast and you don't actually know the direction of travel it's going to take, and I think that was one of those conversations. It's so powerful that someone like James, who you see as this formidable character, shares those stories of depression and despair and those low points. So if you are listening and you're in that place, please do listen to his words. Please do go reach out for help, take that first step. But as alongside that, there was so much more in that conversation. We covered those things about community and the values of rugby, and you know, pride of place, and all so much more. You know, his sense of leadership and his sense of direction and his sense of what he wants to achieve at the rugby club. You know, the purpose of family and all of those kind of things. So I really hope you've enjoyed that episode of the podcast. It meant a lot to me. And if you are enjoying the podcast, then please do subscribe on your favourite channel. That will really help us. And if you want to know more about Evolve, then help us also by going to evolveadvisory.co.uk. Thanks for listening.